Hello, the League of Women Voters, White Bear Lake area welcomes you to this virtual forum for the candidates running for North Oaks City Council. This forum is not open to the public and is not being live streamed. The reason for that is to ensure minimal chance of cable interruption. It is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. In addition, local cable stations will replay this forum on a schedule determined by their station. Candidates, if for some reason your internet connection is lost, please call in using your phone. I'm Liz Nordling, and I do not live in North Oaks, and I'll be moderating this forum tonight. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, long-time, nonpartisan volunteer organization that encourages citizens to participate in government. Our mission is to support voter education and voters' rights. While the League studies and takes stands on issues, we do not support any candidate or any political party. The goal of our forums is for voters to learn more about the positions of the candidates who will be on the ballot in November. All candidates for this race were invited to participate in the forum, and our candidates are Dujmovic, Rick Kingston, Sara Shah, and Tom Watson. Candidates will be giving their opening statements in alphabetical order. After that, the beginning speaker will be rotated for each question, and then closing statements will be in the reverse alphabetical order. A timer will show a card when you have 15 seconds and then stop. We will begin with opening statements, and we will start with Rich Dujmovic.
Greetings. Thanks to the League for hosting this forum. 101 years ago, there was a voiceless majority of Americans. Their interests in government affairs were not represented. In fact, they weren't even known such that they could be represented. Nobody was listening, and that was only 100 years ago. Beloved resident Joan Brainerd, North Oaks historian, leader, and founder of the North Oaks News, was 5 years old when the 19th Amendment was passed and women earned the right to vote. Regrettably, in 2020, North Oaks has regressed. There are forces that have recently put restrictions on the freedom of speech, trying to silence certain voices in public meetings, voices representing a diverse resident group across North Oaks. Newlyweds, young families, empty nesters, single adults, people in their 70s and 80s who've lived here for 45 years. As co-founder of an organization called Preserving the Legacy, I've helped represent that group and for the past 22 months advocated for compliant development in North Oaks. I'm looking forward to representing our community to an even greater extent. Thanks.
Thank you. Next with his opening statement is Rick Kingston.
Hello, my name is Rick Kingston and I'm running for re-election to fill another 4-year term on the North Oaks City Council. I'm running for re-election because I believe we're at a crossroads in deciding the future of our city. We have development that must be done responsibly. We have environmental issues that must be tackled, such as invasive species that threaten the quality of our natural resources, and a primary concern, we are dealing with security issues we never thought could be at our doorstep. In my view, the city needs to be run like any other successful business. We need experienced folks that understand business, government, exercise fiscal responsibility, and apply practical experience in the management of our city government and the services we provide. I have that experience. I'm a no-nonsense leader that knows what it takes to make things work, how to bring people together towards a common goal, and hold my fellow colleagues accountable to stay on course and represent our community with dignity, honesty, dedication, transparency, and integrity. I greatly appreciate your support and your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now with her opening statement is Sara Shah.
Good evening. My name is Sara Shah. Our young family moved to North Oaks several years ago. The beauty of the city and the sense of community drew us here. It has been a pleasure to serve you both as a planning commissioner and a council member. Through these experiences, I have come to appreciate firsthand the importance of transparent, ethical, and collaborative governance. Our unique city faces significant challenges that will require collaborative, productive relationship between the city, NOAA, and the North Oaks Company. We all share a desire to keep North Oaks a safe, beautiful, and prosperous community. It is critical that we work together. I pledge to work with our residents, our HOA, and the North Oaks Company to restore stability and productivity. We also face outsiders who prefer to remake North Oaks against our wishes. As an involved member of the 2040 comprehensive plan process, I help protect our city from attempts to restrict our nature-rich, low-density community plan. I'll continue to fight to keep North Oaks' future its own. I ask for your vote to continue to serve North Oaks on our city council. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Now with his opening statement is Tom Watson.
Good evening. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for this forum. I filed for election to serve as a North Oaks City Council member, and for many of you, you recognize me as the former 4-term mayor who served 8 years ending in 2009. I believe that the community is best served by city council members who demonstrate strategic and leadership skills, knowledge of our city and its government, the experience to guide the city, and the qualities to conduct the city business in a respectful, engaging, and civil manner. I have those qualifications and have demonstrated them in the past. I applied and demonstrated these skills and qualities in my past service, which also included 10 years on the city council and contributed to 1, maintaining North Oaks as an attractive and very livable community, 2, sustaining high property values, 3, managing our natural resources, 4, continuing our safe neighborhoods, and 5, providing one of the lowest costs of local government. I intend to maintain these shared qualities we enjoy in this community while again serving this community that has been our home for 35 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to questions. Questions were solicited from the public at our LWV email. You will have 1 minute to answer each question, and the first question goes to Tom Watson first.
Can I ask a quick question? You told us a minute and a half a minute ago.
Oh, did I say a minute? It is a minute and a half. Minute and a half, answers for the questions, 30-second rebuttal. I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
All right.
Here's the first question. What is your understanding of the intent and rules of the open meeting law? Do you agree to abide by it?
I do understand the open meeting law, and I have always abided by it, and I will continue to do so. The intent is that matters of public decision-making will be conducted in an open forum with proper notice to the public to observe, participate, simply view those kinds of activities. Our communities are continuing challenged, certainly with the pandemic and working with Zoom and all the other virtual media, but we still have to honor those. And the idea simply is that any of these kinds of decisions to be made in public are not to be done at the local bar, local restaurant, between 2 people on a phone call, but rather done in an open public way. I've always subscribed to that. I will continue to do that.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely do understand the open meeting law. As a prior planning commissioner and current city council member, you must abide by the open meeting law. It is put in place so that city business is not done in a vacuum. We certainly have to be aware of any of those vital topics and bring them at large so the public can hear them, and across the entire council, as well the planning commission can have a significant discussion collectively with the public and ensure that they move forward in a manner where there are no secrets and nothing is hidden. There are certain components of the open meeting law that also will move into the electronic venues these days that are integral when you think about social media. So we have to be careful not to divulge any of your opinions on those venues until you have a full meeting with your council or planning commission.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rich Dujmovic.
Thank you. We live in a republic in the United States, which means that government is a public matter. It's not to a ruling class, but it's actually to every citizen. And I believe that the open meeting law directly aligns with that principle. And more important than what I think, the Minnesota Supreme Court believes that that's in the best interest of our state and our citizens. And it's been stated previously, but what this is all about is really making sure that there's a trust between the citizens and their government, and that these decisions are not being made behind closed doors on criteria that the public is unaware of. And so to meet those requirements, the meeting has to be announced. It needs to be held in a proper place. And unfortunately, things like COVID have challenged us on that, but the city has adapted really well to accommodating these kinds of meetings. On top of that, announcement and proper placement, materials have to be prepared and made available to the public for that discussion. And then what's really important to me personally is you can't work around these rules. You can't like have serial meetings with individuals in order to subvert this. And then another thing that is kind of the modern element that didn't exist when these rules came into place was the concept of email and how email plays into this. And when we are emailed as a group, there are rules regarding how we can comply within the open meeting law in that electronic form as well. I believe in the rule. I will support it. I think it's great for our citizens. Thanks.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Kingston.
Thank you very much. I understand the open meeting law. And the thing that hasn't been brought out previously is that the primary issue is that you don't want to have a quorum of council members deciding on issues before a council meeting, for example. So you don't want people coming together in a quorum that control a block of votes or what have you and make decisions outside of the council. There are going to be circumstances where individual council members have to reach out to their colleagues to talk about issues or maybe collaborate on a project that was ordered by the council or directed by the council so that they can have communications. But the big thing here is that you just don't want to be in a situation where people are brought together, a quorum of people are brought together, making decisions behind closed doors that is not in the public view. I haven't done that, and I won't do that. And so I think that's the primary understanding that I want to bring to the conversation today.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next question, and it goes to Rick Kingston first. How do you think citizen comments should be incorporated into city council meetings?
Well, thank you very much. I think, first of all, it's absolutely imperative that we get information from our citizens and give them an opportunity to comment at our council meetings. And I think even more important, we need to find other ways that we can get their input. Oftentimes, we've got a council meeting that's got a full agenda, and oftentimes you've got situations where people want to come up and talk about something that they're very passionate about. The council is not in a position to take that issue up at that particular point, but rather, take it under advisement, refer it to city staff, and then have it investigated further so it maybe is brought up as a council agenda item. But I also think that it's important that we find other ways to engage our citizens. Town hall meetings are something that would be a very welcome platform to do that, or venue. And I think when we do that, we should also engage our NOAA representatives as well, so that we can bring complicated issues to a large meeting and let people hash out their feelings, their thoughts, and their perspectives on it. I still think that it's important that we have an opportunity for people to speak at the council. I voted on keeping that active in our current council, that people can come up and have their say. So I think that is very important, that people have that opportunity to speak what they have on their mind, and that we engage and listen to what they have to say.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rich Dujmovic.
Thank you. This is a topic on which I am quite passionate. I spent quite a bit of time on one side of the podium, and I'm running to be on the other side of the podium. And to afford citizens the respect, the civil treatment, and the true listening to what they have to say. I think that our city has had a lot of very contentious meetings that did not have to be contentious over the last couple years. There have been citizens who have wanted to be heard, and there has been a lack of respect shown to certain citizens and certain voices from certain members of the city council. And I think that really the city should be open to all voices. I think in our collective work, both in government and outside of work, arguments reinforce what is important to the community. They help us understand what our priorities would be. If they are conducted civilly, they help advance the conversation and can reinforce the values and the priorities for the community. And that's what I think we've tried to do as a citizen group, to bring factual information in a respectful forum into the public engagement atmosphere of a city council meeting, such that people can have intelligent discussion and be informed and make proper decisions based on information. We've done some research which I think has helped the city and has progressed some of the development decisions in other areas, and I'm proud to have done so.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
Thank you. Citizen participation in our governments is essential. We are representatives of our citizens, our representatives of our residents. And every body I've been elected to, which is 18 years in North Oaks, always had a citizen comment section to that, allowing folks the time to address the council. What's kind of interesting with citizen comments is that when matters are handled properly, citizens generally are well respecting the process, are handled properly, the matters are dealt with in a timely, in a professional manner. You don't have rooms full of people. A good judge of whether the open meeting, the citizen section of an agenda is working is whether you got an overflow crowd, a hot topic, or you got a confusing environment. I think the other piece I would argue about that the current council, and in recent years, I don't think North Oaks has done very well, is there are certain matters that are very, very difficult. They're detailed, they take time to understand, they're complicated. People need to participate in those matters. In many cases, that entails calling work sessions, special meetings to handle those and allow the citizens an opportunity to do that rather than rushing through certain decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Yes, I do believe very much that people need the ability to speak and speak at council meetings, particularly. This is their city, and we welcome community involvement. And in fact, I've been very, very pleased by how many people have come forward in the last 20 months to express their opinions and provide feedback to the city. And let them be heard. This is, the city council meetings and planning commission meetings are vital to have that meaningful dialogue and hear what matters to the people of North Oaks. And that's how you create meaningful policies as well. But we do need to have a process around this. And when something comes up in those citizen comments, I've always been concerned because there's been amazing information that they have brought forward. And I'd like to see how we could handle that so that we don't lose that and it's given to staff, or we know that someone's looking into it, etc. But I also would be open to other possible venues to communicate with the people of North Oaks. And that's where there are a lot of opportunities to go out to the neighborhoods and have not a large, town hall meeting. I want to see small venues with just neighborhoods, maybe Rat Farm, we can talk to them and move over to the island. We can go over to Waverly Gardens and whatnot, but we need to start working through more of that dialogue and understanding what's important to the people of North Oaks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments?
I might just share that sometimes we as a city think that because there's a citizen comment on something, that city council needs to do something that evening or immediately. That's completely not the case. I think people understand very well that it's very hard to respond to things, but it's just good to give somebody the forum and the opportunity to share that information. And I think we have an empathetic community there's no need to take action on that particular matter that particular evening.
Thank you. Anyone else with additional comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next question. It goes to Sara Shah first. What is your position on a home maintenance ordinance?
Yes, first off, I know there was a survey sent out to residents on this very issue about 6 to 8 months ago to understand if there was support or opposition to a potential housing ordinance. I'd like to first see that data before I take a position. I'd like to see the comments. I think that would be very fruitful. And I want to see how many people actually did take that survey. I recognize that we have distressed properties. I mean, people can see it by driving around our city, and it impacts our property values, but it's a challenging topic. There's a lot of concerns, such as if we had an ordinance of this, it would infringe on people's liberties, their property rights. Moreover, it brings up a lot of questions and concerns on enforcement. So it is something we need to deal with, but I think we're going to have to take a closer look at it. And I would be encouraging of looking at maybe a task force or subcommittee to help look at the matter more. And alternatively, I want to explore options, other ways that we could handle this problem instead of an ordinance. I mean, maybe we could solve the issue in different ways. And I often look at our community and see how much talent we have in this city. And it might be an opportunity to unite and come together, maybe a volunteer opportunity to assist some of these homeowners, that are perhaps older and need some help. I mean, we have lots of families with teenagers, college-bound children that are looking ways to volunteer, and professionals in our community that are experts in remodeling. I just think we could really do something special here and bring people together, make a difference, not only for our community, but maybe a neighbor's life as well.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
Thank you. North Oaks is unique in the topic of home maintenance and home matters, in that the city has some responsibility, and the deeds and the covenants and the deeds we have in North Oaks also address many of those responsibilities as belonging to the North Oaks Homeowners Association. In the recent years, and I haven't kept track of this probably for several years until a couple of years ago, but when I was mayor, we conducted a couple of annually, at least, work sessions with the North Oaks Homeowners Association to discuss these very matters that we shared and had shared responsibility. That's sadly missing, and that needs to be restored. Age of property is one in the eyes of some people who own those properties, I would submit. A lady that Rich referred to in his opening remarks is one of the first 6 homes ever built in North Oaks. Naturally, it's an old home built in the 50s. 70 years old. It's not $1 million house sitting in Red Forest or out on the island or somewhere. We're looking to attract folks of many ages and many interests and many economic situations to the community. And some of these fixer-uppers are very interesting homes. I'm in a 60-year-old house. We take care of it. We take care of it all the time. It's got some charm to it that we like. Not everybody wants a brand new house. And so I think the shared responsibility, the recognition that we're attracting to many people in the community really is important in answering that question.
Thank you. The question goes to Rick Kingston.
Well, thank you. First of all, I think that all of us would recognize that there probably are some homes in the city that go beyond simple maintenance. We had a home on one of the streets that literally had a tar paper roof for a decade, and there was nothing that the city could do to deal with it. So I'm not talking about somebody has a little bit of chipping paint or something like that, but we do need to acknowledge that there might be circumstances where we do need to take some action. The question is what kind of action do you take? I'm not sure that an ordinance is necessarily required. Maybe there's other ways that we could deal with it. We certainly have could take a look at a revitalized North Oaks Foundation and see if we can help people that might be disadvantaged from, maybe it's an elderly couple that are on a fixed income, or maybe it's even a household that's been impacted by COVID and they don't have any revenue coming into the home. So there are things, we're a giving community there, and I think that there are things that we could do to help people that might be in those types of circumstances. As far as the more distressed types of properties that I mentioned, I think that there needs to be a thoughtful discussion about what could be done, how it should be done, and make sure that we don't violate the privacy of our citizens at the same time. So I think that there's some hope. The number one thing is get it on the agenda and let's have an open and honest discussion about it and see what we can do.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rich Dujmovic.
Thank you. The first thing here is to distinguish a distressed home from a dilapidated home. A distressed home, by definition, is a home where a project started, but it did not complete in the allotted time frame. And our NOAA's Architectural Supervisory Committee monitors that. Then there's something called a dilapidated home, which NOAA is also looking to address, which is a different category. This is not a project. This is basically the age, wear, and tear on a given property. And here there's a number of questions that we need to have as a community and talk about them between NOAA and the city. Who gets to determine if a home is dilapidated? What if the homeowner disagrees? What if the homeowner agrees with the designation but doesn't have the means to do something? We've seen in other communities that this is addressed through programs that have low or no interest loans that can help with these kinds of things. We've also, as Sarah pointed out, there are people in the community who have skills. We can actually help some of these houses get back into a state of repair with our own citizens. We can think about designating a portion of revenue to be set aside to deal with these kind of circumstances as they materialize. We can think about a charitable contribution fund within the community that might be able to assist fellow neighbors if they don't have the means to take care of something like this. We can talk about a city incentive or initiative to purchase some properties and revitalize them as a training program, perhaps for people even at local universities, and then to turn over the proceeds into something that we could use as a community. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments?
I do, Liz. I'd like to add just a couple of items if I could. We can't lose sight of the fact that the city of North Oaks and all of its homes and all of its structures are covered by the state building code, which establishes very strict standards that we must adhere to. And number two, the ASC review is part of that. Our city staff does building code compliance checks. And the third thing I would not want to lose sight of, we have a thing in North Oaks called buyers and sellers. And buyers and sellers are going to, in many cases, handle those kinds of transactions, and that's where it should be too.
Thank you. Anyone else with, yes, Rick?
I think it's really important, as somebody mentioned earlier, that we don't take a look at an old home and think that it's distressed. One of the things that's really unique about North Oaks is the heritage that we have in a rich architecture and history. And I think that's something that's very appealing, is that there's really something for everybody. And so I just want to make sure that we understand what we're talking about here. We're not talking about older homes that are well maintained or, you know, show character. So I think that's important to point out.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to the next question. It goes to Rich Dujmovic first. What does transparency in public office mean to you? Have you been transparent in your current role in the city's government? How would you improve transparency at the council level?
Okay, so transparency to me talks to the community being in possession of information and the government sharing it or withholding it. Early on in discussions in 2018, the city administrator, who is no longer with us, wrote a memo with some other city staff that had a bunch of information that they were privy to that basically made the case that a development proposal from the North Oaks company that was going to affect portions of our community was compliant and met the requirements for development in our community. There was not, at the time, public access to a lot of information. And my colleague below, former Mayor Tom Watson, now running for City Council, was able to produce some documents. And I myself went into City Council and produced, at the rate of 25 cents a page, what became known as the PUD, or the Planned Unit Development. I read that material, and then we tried to get that material out to the public by emailing it to folks and sharing it. And that's what transparency is, making sure that the community has access to the information that's guiding our decision making. And I think transparency is very important. And since then, the city has done a phenomenal job at making those materials available, and in fact, making them in searchable form available to the residents to look at and to read and to acknowledge. Transparency is absolutely critical to that relationship of trust between citizen and government, and I have been transparent and would support it.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Kingston.
Thank you. First of all, as far as transparency goes, I think I've been pretty transparent across the board. Most people that know me know that what I say, either in public or in private, is pretty much consistent, and I don't have any problem with being transparent, certainly in our council meetings. I do think it's important that there is full transparency. As an example, we shouldn't be going out and getting independent expert opinions on things that come before the council and then springing it on the council at the last minute. That's just not the way that things are done, especially if you're talking about transparency. And as far as making sure that documents are available, a little tongue-in-cheek, I'd have to give former Mayor Watson a little bit of trouble, because I wish that all those documents that he was talking about weren't stored in his basement. But that said, I think it's important that all of us need to come forward and make sure that we're transparent with any information that we've got, and citizens are entitled to seeing that.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
I'll rebut Mr. Kingston's comment when I get a chance. I think transparency really hinges on probably three items. One is trust. Two is appearance and perception. And 3 is knowing when to release information and provide that information to your public. And part of that is a judgment. Transparency is one of the new terms that many of us subscribe to for many, many years. Mr. Kingston refers to a box of documents in my office, in my basement. Well, it turns out I missed the shredder, so otherwise they would have been gone. Turns out they weren't official city records. They were just duplicates of ones that I retained from way back many years ago. The same documents are in the city office, and it's not a transparency question, but if the information hadn't been, if I hadn't gone to a council meeting because I had nothing else to do on a February night, I wouldn't have known about any of this stuff. Talk about lack of transparency in the community, is not to share that information with people who live in the community. And incidentally, in those particular cases, there were 5 names on that development agreement. 3 of us still live in North Oaks. Did we ever get a call from the current council or administrator or otherwise? Never. Bad
Thank
case
you.
of transparency.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Yes, transparency is very vital. To me, it means that you're honest, and as a council member, you are doing your work publicly for the people of North Oaks. That means if you are a council member, in my opinion, if you have ideas or questions, concerns, or if you want additional research to be done, you need to bring it forward. It needs to be brought forward to the staff, where we have a chain of command and an additional resource to help council members gather that information and ensure that it's brought forward so that the entire council can hear about the facts, the data, the reports, etc. I have serious concerns for those that are not transparent and individually go rogue and do things in a vacuum. It's certainly doing a disservice to the entire council and not making it public for our residents. Yes, I believe I've been transparent. I took an oath to do this, and I hold myself to very high expectations. We must be transparent. We have to instill trust to the people. And we need to hold each other accountable when you're not transparent, as we need to ensure that people entrust their local government. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next question. It goes to Sara Shah first. Explain how collaboration and cooperation fit into the work of the council.
Yeah, this is a great question. One, I would say at a high level, collaboration is essential because the city is one of course, the 3 tiers of the city, NOAA, and the North Oaks Council. We certainly have to have cross-community issues that involve all entities. So it's very much expected that you can work across all stakeholders, reach across the entities that have different rules, and ensuring that we're looking and trying to find a solution for our residents. It's very important. Now, there's also collaboration within the council and working as a team towards a common goal as issues derive in the city. I think that we can handle that in a more proper and civil way in the council. We don't always agree, but you can respectively disagree and hold each other accountable and challenge each other. But I do believe you can do that collaboratively, and I'd like to see that happening in the future.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
Thank you. Collaboration and cooperation is actually I've said many times, a poster child for how we do business in North Oaks. We have a relationship with the North Oaks Homeowners Association, which is unlike a relationship of such a homeowners association probably in any community around that I know of, in that they have responsibility for roads, they have responsibility for recreation, they have responsibility for parks and trails. The city has responsibility for police and fire, building codes, land use matters. City also, in North Oaks case, has 3 very popular and very positive, constructive relationships for police, for fire, and for managing the watershed, which are multi-city relationships. Police is 7 cities with the sheriff, Ramsey County Sheriff. Fire is 3 cities, with Arden Hills and Shoreview. The watershed of Lamo includes essentially Lino Lakes and people like Gem Lake and White Bear Township and ourselves, etc. Venice Heights is part of that relationship. We can do a lot of things together, and we've had a history, a very, very strong history of doing those things together as a community, the city council working with the councils of those particular communities, the administrators of those communities, in many cases, the leadership of our communities working together on those very successfully over these many years. Thank you.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Dujmovic.
Thank you. Collaboration, cooperation is what I enjoy most about my day job. And when I think about how it fits in on the council, it's absolutely critical to smooth operation of the city. First off, there has to be respect for our fellow city council members and then other members of our city council family, which is like the Natural Resource Commission, the Planning Commission. A respect for the expertise, the volunteerism, the passion, the knowledge that they bring to their work. But collaboration goes far beyond that in cooperation. I work in medical devices. We build pacemakers, defibrillators, those kinds of devices. If an engineer were to design a device that manufacturing couldn't build, that would be an awful situation. There needs to be collaboration and respect and cooperation between those two entities if we're going to produce that life-saving technology. Same thing for the city. As Tom pointed out, the city owns no land, and yet the city has the authority and the ability to approve development. Who has to pick up the financial responsibilities for that is NOAA. And so there's tremendous need for cooperation and collaboration between those two entities, because ultimately the decisions the city makes are going to fall financially on NOAA and their responsibilities. And thus we have to have a really good understanding and appreciation for each other's responsibilities, such that when we make decisions, we make them for the best, in the best interest of the community. Thanks.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Kingston.
So when I think about collaboration and cooperation, I have to think of a good Rolling Stones lyric. And it says basically, you don't always get what you want. You know, the reality is that there's a third C in the collaboration and cooperation, and that's compromise. What I think is really important is that you come together, you collaborate, you cooperate, and you compromise to get what's best for the city. And again, you're not always going to get what you want, but what we hope is that we all get what we need. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments?
I would, Liz, if I could, just add one quick comment. I had the fortunate to first be on the city council in 1990, which gave me an opportunity to actually spend some time on 2 occasions with Lewis W. Hill Jr., grandson of James J. Hill, who pointed out that North Oaks was, the golf course was one of the first things built. The homeowners association was the next one of the things created, and the city was one of the last things organized. And he called it the 3-legged stool. And he said the success of North Oaks will be the strength of those 3 legs: the company, the homeowners association, and the city. I can't find the stool today.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just say that when it comes to compromise, I think there are obviously opportunities to compromise, and there are just some things on which we aren't really going to compromise. And that's when it comes to the environment. This community was built in a very, very special plot of land. We have tremendous responsibility. 500,000 fellow Minnesotans rely on water that flows through our community. And it's up to us to protect that like the precious resource that it is. And there are just some things on which we are not going to compromise because of that responsibility.
Thank you. Anyone else have additional comments? Then we'll move on to the next question, and it goes to Rick Kingston first. How well do you think the city and the North Oaks Homeowners Association work together? How can that relationship be improved?
Well, thanks for that question. And that's something I think is absolutely vital to the future of this city. The reality is that we haven't worked together very well. And there's a whole host of reasons for it, but I think we need to put every possible reason for not working together aside and come together as 2 governing sister organizations, if you will. The city has got specific responsibilities that are, fire protection, safety, and that type of thing. But the North Oaks Homeowners Association has some of the same issues, but they approach it from a different way because they have different rights. So it's absolutely imperative that we come together with NOAA. We work together as a community. We develop a shared vision so that we're all on the same sheet of music, and we know what the roles and responsibilities are of each of the organizations so that we can maximally benefit from what each entity comes to the table with and what they're best at doing. But again, we need to do a much better job of coming together. And I think that historically has been a challenge over the years. Having lived in the community for over 30 years, I've always heard that there have been challenges between the two organizations. It really doesn't need to exist. We're all part of the same residents. We draw from the same community. We should have a shared perspective and vision for the community, and we should work together to make that happen.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rich Dujmovic.
Thank you. I too, like Rick, just agree that this relationship is absolutely fundamental. Abraham Lincoln told us that there is no limit to the good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. And we share this community, the city, NOAA, and the North Oaks Company, three of us all together. And if we're not really worried about who gets the credit for achieving a wonderful success, I think we can do some amazing things together through collaboration. Importantly, North Oaks is a private community, and its privacy hinges on the fact that NOAA has a lot of the responsibilities that in other communities fall on the city. In order to retain that private status, we have to keep it that way. And they have actually developed skills and expertise and best practices over decades in managing our community. What they need from the city is a partner, someone who trusts them in their responsibility and supports them, works with them, and makes them even more capable, as opposed to someone who might be standing in their way. Two examples. When I think about the environment that we just spoke on a little while ago, the NRC is the city's environmentally focused group, and NEST is NOAA's. They work together today, they work together very well. Security, we have budget and police force. NOAA has responsibility for our trails and keeping our community private. There's another opportunity for us to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Yes, I absolutely do believe there's an opportunity for us to improve relations across the board, not just with NOAA, but also the North Oaks Company. Again, as Mr. Watson pointed out, we have a three-legged stool, and it's imperative that we partner across all three entities for the future, as well as tackling current issues. I think when it comes to our resident point of view, it's always been a challenge because a lot of our residents don't understand the hard line between the entities. And that's where I'd like to spend a lot of time going forward to build a long-term vision, a shared vision across all three, particularly for NOAA in the city. We haven't done that in some time, and we don't have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan that's built by the residents and crosses these entities. And I really want to see involvement, engagement from all parties across the board, and where we set goals and what do people want to see in 5 years, 10 years. That's where we could cultivate a really comprehensive shared plan for our future across all three, not just NOAA, the city, but also the North Oaks Company.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Sarah picking up on my comment about shared vision. She's been reading my campaign material. It's very good. Thank you. Each of the two bodies has very specific responsibilities. And I'm really disappointed in hearing Mr. Kingston indicate there's been a long history of challenges of these two organizations working together. That couldn't be further from the truth. I can tell you in the 8 years I was mayor and probably half of the 10 years I was on the council, we conducted annual and biennial work sessions and planning meetings and discussions, participated in each other's meetings. There is no excuse for the kind of thing that's been going on at the moment. In terms of financial improvements, I think the two bodies can work together on some financial and budgetary issues. The city cannot be a substitute for NOAA and vice versa. but there are contractual relationships that can be negotiated between the two. NOAA dues are not tax deductible. Property tax is. There's a financial advantage in doing that. Number three comment I would make to Sarah's comment about a 5 and 10 year plan. We have that 10-year plan. It's called a comp plan. It has to be done every 10 years. But it should have been done in conjunction with the Homeowners Association, and they had some issues with it, as I observed, having observed it at the very last, which was an indication that it hadn't been set up properly and hadn't worked very effectively. So yes, it must be done. It is the three-legged stool. It's one of the legs, or the two legs, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments?
I do. I just want to speak to what Mr. Watson said about our 2040 comprehensive plan. Yes, indeed, we have that in place, and that is a document that is reviewed by our sister entity, NOAA. But what I'm looking to do, I think it's a broader shared item. I want the residents to help us build a shared vision, a community plan for what they want to see. And yes, that will involve NOAA in the city, but I really want to give it back to the people in North Oaks.
Thank you. Rick Kingston?
Yeah, I just want to go back to one of Tom's comments. I think that there certainly have been times when NOAA and the city have worked together, and I'm really grateful for that. But I think you'd have to have your head in the sand to not realize that there have been times that they haven't worked together. And I think right now that's a situation where we're not working together on the same sheet of music. And so my only point is that we need to break down those barriers and get back on the right track.
Thank you. Tom or Rich, any additional comments?
I would make one. I've kept my head out of the sand the entire time that I served 18 years on the council. And I would say that it worked very positively with NOAA during the 8 years. And I will take Mr. Kingston's comment. Rick is correct. From what I can see, the last 10 years, the relationship between the city and NOAA has been pretty much non-existent. And it's too bad.
Thank you.
Lastly,
Rich, comments?
Since everybody's going to comment on this, I would just say that I find my colleagues at NOAA to be extraordinarily open in discussing. The amount of time that people are willing to volunteer and dedicate to sharing in this community is noteworthy. People are so passionate about what they're doing and so willing to give to others and to explain things in detail, provide materials. Let's take advantage of that, because we have some remarkable people who are serving in both city government and in the NOAA side of the business. Let's leverage that. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. It goes to Tom Watson first. How well is the North Oaks City Council engaging the community and incorporating its feedback into North Oaks plans? How would you improve this relationship?
Thank you for that question. Current city council is not engaging the community very well. The contentious nature of the discussions that cannot be conducted civilly. We're taking these different votes because 3 people just don't like the idea of somebody else. The whole reason some of these things are occurring is because we do not have experienced staff and people working in the community that know this community well. This is not Eden Prairie. This is not Lakeville. This is North Oaks, and it's got some unique features to it that many of us that have lived here as long as I have, 35 years, and others that arrived 32 weeks ago, embrace significantly. What would we do about that? First of all, we've talked about some of those things. Citizen comment period would be back on an agenda. Agendas would be out a week in advance. All of the details would be out in advance. When former Mayor Bill Eklund was mayor, we put together a policy describing getting material out to the public to give them an opportunity to review those things through a weekend prior to a Thursday night council meeting. It is probably just simply communicating with folks, being honest, being civil, genuinely engaging people, welcoming them to these conversations. That is not the environment at the moment. It's a rather hostile environment at the moment, which is sad.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Yes, we absolutely do need to do a better job of engaging the community. I would say we're doing an okay job communicating to the community right now. There's certain venues to do that. And those have certainly been, we've moved the needle on that even in 2 years. But I've always witnessed the fact that we're not doing a good job communicating with. And then that is engagement, where you can make significant progress with the residents of North Oaks. I would like to see, we've had a lot of people come forward to the council meetings, and I hope we can continue that so that we can hear their thoughts, their concerns, their feedback. But what I would like to look forward to is having more dialogue outside of the council meetings. We just have to find a different venue where people are comfortable, where they don't have to come to a microphone, where we can whiteboard, we can have work sessions, where we can go to their community. I want to go to West Rec and just, we all can work together as a community. I fundamentally think it's missing right now. And it's a huge opportunity to really speak with our residents, engage, listen to them, have a great conversation, a working session. So I'd like to build a concept of like mini town halls, a moving town hall across our city in different places, different neighborhoods, so that people have various opportunities to come forward and get engaged.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Kingston.
Well, one of the first things that I would mention is that I think the folks that have had issues or concerns about the direction of the city or different plans or whatever have certainly made their issues known. And it's happened at just about every council meeting that we've had. We also have got issues even with the dynamics within the council itself. And I think that's also a concern, is that we have to get back to that collaboration and cooperation and making sure that everybody's on the same sheet of music. Just like Sarah mentioned, I think that the opportunity to get input from people in different venues, such as town hall meetings, is extremely important. And that's something that we should all work together to see if we can make that happen. And again, we need to involve NOAA in that process.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rich Dujmovic.
Thank you. Wonderful question. To me, when I think about community engagement, it's about approachability. It's about warmly inviting someone into dialogue. When my wife and I were attending our very first city council meeting, we sat in the audience, knew very few people, and 2 city council members came out to greet us. They did not know us, we did not know them. And they were Katie Ross and Kara Rees. They introduced themselves, talked a little bit about how we were enjoying living in the community, who we were. That kind of warm engagement and the approachable nature of someone on city council generates a dialogue that can really help. And when it comes to working within the community, Rick has mentioned the word a couple times, compromise. Compromise is a wonderful thing. And I think we had numerous opportunities to compromise with the North Oaks company over the course of the last 22 months that were lost. Back in 2002, when Waverly Gardens and the Muse plans were first envisioned, they were envisioned for a certain number of units to be built, about 150 up there, plus 90 for the Muse. What was actually built exceeded that. About 235 units were built. A compromise was reached between the city and the North Oaks company as to how they were going to accommodate that overbuilding. And it was a gift to the North Oaks company and simultaneously a gift to our community in that we got a larger, more productive community up in the northeast corner. That's the kind of compromise that we can see in the future if we put our minds to it.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments?
Liz, I would just like to add one
Yes, Tom.
that came up. Sarah alluded to it, and I like the idea. The other thing in this particular community, there are a lot of very, very interesting people. And during my past service, I got to figure out who these people are, what their skills are, what kind of talents they bring to the community, and engage them in task forces and committees as needed. Natural Resources Committee that we know today was a product of a task force that I initiated in 2005. Lady's name was Babette, lived over on Thompson Lane, asked her to chair it because I learned something about her background that was important to that. I think we can do a better job of engaging people, inviting them in.
Thank you. Anyone else with additional comments?
Just like
Seeing
to,
none? Oh, okay. Rich?
yeah, I'd just like to say one thing on the compromise element too. There was a lot of discussion over the last 22 months on a particular trail that connects portions of our community. People love the interconnected trail system in North Oaks, particularly because it allows them to ski for long distances without having to remove their skis. And what they wanted was a particular trail orientation. There was a lot of passion around that. A lot of meetings occurred on that. And the reason was it's a really valuable portion of who we are as a community. I would have liked to see some compromise there. I would have liked to see some better, deeper negotiation on that and something that could have been a more mutually satisfying solution.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to the next question, which will be our last question. And it goes first to Rich Dujmovic. What qualification do you think sets you the most apart from the others seeking office?
Thank you very much. On a daily basis, I get to work with cross-functional teams. I get to work with engineers, scientists, manufacturing personnel, finance personnel, clinicians, regulatory folks, people in technical communications. I work with a very cross-functional group. Not everybody agrees. People bring different perspectives. It's my job to represent the work of all of those groups. It's my team's job to represent the work of all those groups to international governments, 77 different countries. I love working in an environment where I get to learn from others, where I take an idea, share it with someone, they make it better because they show me where my idea is weak, where it has gaps, where I could reinforce something. I enhance the idea and build it up by working with other people. I do that every day at work. I love it. I've been building those muscles for a long period of time. When I was in the military, I worked with cross-functional folks, the folks who maintain our planes, the folks who set up our tents in the desert where we would live, the folks who fuel our planes, and then the crews that actually are the pilots, the navigator, the boom operator. I worked cross-functionally with those folks, and together we accomplished missions. We worked extraordinarily hard in very, very difficult situations around the globe in order to give people the peace in Kosovo and Bosnia, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia. When I really felt satisfied by that, I love exercising those skills, and I'd love to do it on behalf of the city now.
Thank you. The question now goes to Rick Kingston.
Well, first of all, I've really been privileged to have a variety of different work functions over the years. I've been on the faculty of the University of Minnesota for over 30 years. I rose to the rank of full professor in the Department of Experimental and Clinical Pharmacology within the College of Pharmacy. I'm still a clinical professor at the U, and I still teach, and actively I love working with students and our residents. I've also had the opportunity to work with federal agencies, with the EPA, FDA, CPSC, and international organizations that and their counterparts on a variety of different issues, which means that you have to work with a diversity of different opinions and so forth. The last thing is that I've been a very successful business leader. The company that I'm co-founder and senior partner is Safety Call International and Pet Poison Helpline. It's the largest corporate private poison center in the world. We certainly provide a lot of services that also reach out to the public with our Pet Poison Helpline. But what I'm most proud of is that we've been voted a top workplace for 10 years. Just recently got that from the Star Tribune. And I think that being a top workplace in Minnesota, you earn that. I've been very proud of the fact that in our executive ranks, 80% are female. And I'm proud of that too. I think that that really speaks to being inclusive. So I think that I have, being a healthcare professional, I offer that additional component that nobody else on the council currently has.
Thank you. The question now goes to Tom Watson.
Thank you. Experience. I know this community. I was elected 7 times to serve this community. Was involved in an awful lot of the development that we've been talking about tonight, whether it's East Oaks development, and putting together a number of our joint powers agreements with police, fire, and Vadnais Lakes Water Management Organization. Number 2, I started my own company back in 1981 and have been operating that to this day, providing management services to nonprofits, for-profits, family-owned businesses, local governments. Number 3, like Rick, I spent 37 years as an adjunct professor teaching finance, strategic management, and policy matters, including capstone programs to MBA programs at the University of St. Thomas, Humphrey Institute at the University, and Metropolitan State University. Community activism, it's the name of the game. I served as a scout leader the committee chair for the Troop 63 when it was sponsored by the North Oaks Homeowners Association, a volunteer assistant coach in track and field cross country at Mounds View. Started in 1997 a high school cross country meet for about 1,000 kids, 30 schools from across the country at Chippewa School. The pandemic this year took care of that. And so in terms of background and experience in this community, I've had a lot of it, and I'm anxious to put it to work again.
Thank you. The question now goes to Sara Shah.
Thank you. First off, I'd say it's my civic experience that sets me apart from other candidates. I have served the city both as a city council member and as a planning commissioner. For those that watched the meetings, I was very, very vocal on the planning commission these past 2 years and asked very specific questions. I remained vigilant during our discussions on the 2040 comp plan to protect our low density and nature rich attributes. I also sat through the preliminary plan proposals for the 3 initial developments on East Oaks. I thoroughly understand the PDA and I understand the binding nature of it. The second thing that sets me apart is that I'm very transparent and I'm also a very approachable team player. I want to work with all stakeholders in this community, and that includes NOAA and the North Oaks Company. I do not come forward with any personal agenda. I am going to remain impartial and I will be fair and transparent. And I simply want to move the city forward to meet the evolving needs of this community.
Thank you. We'll now go on to our closing statements, and we'll go in reverse alphabetical order from the opening statements. And so we start with Tom Watson.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, again for putting this event on, and Rich, Rick, Sarah, thank you for participating. I will appreciate your vote on November 3rd. I will serve and lead diligently and effectively as I have in the past. It is time to get the North Oaks good government train back on the tracks, and I have the leadership skills to do so. I have consistently demonstrated a commitment to our community vision and values. I have sought to be fair and reasonable at times of tough debate and negotiating demanding issues. I have a strategic management consulting practice and work with growing and struggling private and public enterprises on a variety of strategic and financial matters. I've indicated my professional background as a business owner, adjunct professor, extensive community volunteering service. Again, I'll appreciate your vote, and I will serve responsibly and civilly and respect all parties in this wonderful, wonderful community. Thank you, and everyone stay well.
Thank you. Next with her closing statement is Sara Shah.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this forum and answer these questions. It has been a privilege to serve all of you as a planning commissioner and city council member over the last few years. I ask for your support to continue to serve this community. I pledge to work to keep North Oaks' unique, nature-focused, low-density plan, the plan originally envisioned by the Hill family when they created our community. I will work with our residents, our other elected representatives, our HOA, and the North Oaks Company to maintain North Oaks as a premier private, multi-generational community in the Twin Cities. So in closing, for ethical, transparent leadership focused on maintaining and improving our wonderful community, please vote for myself, Sara Shah, on the City Council this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Next with this closing statement is Rick Kingston.
Well, first, I'd certainly like to thank the League for bringing us together and thank the other candidates for volunteering their time. There's not a lot of money that goes along with this, as all of us know. But I'd like to leave you with one thought. Whenever an issue comes before the council, I always ask myself, is it good for the community? Is it good for safety, security, and the health of our residents? Does it increase our property values? Does it improve the quality of life for our residents? I don't have all the answers, and I can assure you my wife will attest to that. But that's why I come to the council meetings with an open mind and a willingness to listen to varied opinions. I've done that in my successful business and academic career, and that's the way I've worked for our residents, our community at large, as a council member and deputy mayor. My name's Rick Kingston, and I really appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next with his closing statement is Rick Dujmovic.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Sharon. Like all leaders, government representatives make a choice as to how they will represent. Elected officials can choose consideration for others. They can choose self-control. They can choose to promote a collaborative spirit within their community. They can choose a commitment to respecting the colleagues with whom they serve and working side by side with those colleagues, provide the same level of respect to their constituents in order that those constituents have a voice in government affairs. They can rise above themselves in order to serve others. I choose this path every day. We have a city filled with remarkable people possessing deep and diverse talent sets, a community with a rich history of being thoughtful, ecologically aware, and charitable. And it's important to have representatives who recognize and respect those attributes, assuming positive intent and truly listening as they seek to understand community perspectives. Let's elect leaders who want to be held accountable to the people they represent. Let's harness the collective talent of North Oaks, honor its legacy, embrace the future, and together make this a place you'd want to move to all over again.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for coming forward to run and speaking to voters about the issues. Thank you to our viewers for watching and for your interest in becoming informed voters. We will put all of our forums on our YouTube channel. You'll find links to the recordings for all of the candidate forums on the League of Women Voters White Bear Lake Area website, which is lwv-wbla.org. You can request an absentee ballot now on the Secretary of State's website, which is minvotes.org. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can also do that online or when you go to vote. Make your voice be heard in the general election by voting by November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.